bittersweet re-release. If it was under any different kind of circumstances, topic, I think I would be totally ecstatic. Stella and Como, my co-author, and I are honored to have this book re-released by Harvard. Unfortunately, when you look at the data, when you look at the statistics in terms of the advancement of African American women, we have seen very little progress, not in terms of education level, but in terms of them being able to advance in corporate America. They're still not where they need to be. We just heard Fortune 500 companies, there are now 39 white women, 2 African American women. That's not parity with men at all for neither of the groups. But why can't we get past just 1 African American woman or 2 African American? We can't even break the 10 number. You know, can there be 10? There's something that is not clicking, not working. What we're doing currently in terms of advancing people, all people, is not working for African American women. And quite frankly, not doing all it can do for all women. To be brutally honest, no. Have things improved some degree? Yes, but very small increments, if you will. We take 2 steps forward, we take 5 steps backwards. Here's what we know for sure. Last summer was a hot year for race and race relations in all the wrong ways in our country. Systemic racism is very much alive and well. And, you know, guess what's back? The ugly head of white supremacy has made itself clearly visible. Never really went away, but it's clearly evident in our politics and in our day-to-day lives now. We've spent a lot of time doing kumbaya types of things, building relationships, racial awareness. We haven't spent the same quality of time of addressing systemic racism, where women get stuck, how they get stuck, the lack of sponsors, wage equity. Companies are not developing, spending money, making sure that Black women have the skills, if you will, the development, the polishing, if you will, to be able to take senior positions, to be able to get the positions that are going to bring in revenue. You will see many women getting promoted now, and that's exciting. Black women, brown women, a lot of them are going into D&I positions, diversity and inclusion. That's not going to bring in revenue. That job is not going to make you a top game player. It's not going to put you in competition with the white men for those high profile revenue earning monies. So we need a different approach to really understand how to advance all women, but particularly Black and brown women. And I would put Asian women there too, to be honest with you. I think Asian women get trapped in technology jobs. You know, the thing that I am hopeful about, the environmental context, what's happening in our society. What I saw last year, George Floyd tragedy, and Breonna Taylor and all the others, when I saw the protests, I saw young whites in those protests. Never saw that before to that degree. Yes, we had in the 60s, we had the Freedom Riders and all that, but to see young white, Black, Asian, brown faces in these protests of all ages, it was heart striking to me. I think there's a greater awareness in the broader society right now, which makes me hopeful. I am concerned about how corporations respond. There is the external response, and companies are really good with the external response. That's throwing money at. Black Lives Matters got money. The historically Black colleges, they got money. Corporations were very generous, and that's fantastic. But they also have to put the same type of energy internally. What's going on inside of their companies in terms of the advancement, the succession, the retaining, the pay equity of their brown and Black people, particularly their women. And I'm not sure equal time was given, and I'm not sure how long equal timing was given. And again, this is not something that you can check the box on. If anything, we know that this is a continual work that needs to be done. We need to start looking at the boards of directorships. Who has expertise in D&I, particularly inclusion? Diversity is just your numbers. You know, what does your demographic profile look like? You really have to work on inclusion, building trust, building equity systems, understanding the systemic blocks in the system, and belonging, you know, so that I feel like I'm really belonging to your company. There needs to be people on the board that understand and recognize and have these kinds of frameworks in their heads, quite frankly, actions that are still needed to be taken. But as long as companies do the kumbaya, we feel good and check the box and okay, we don't have to do this anymore, I don't think we're going to get there or see difference in the long term. I'm looking for sustainability, sustainable difference, radical change, that we don't have to keep having this conversation 20, 30 years later. I don't want this conversation to be had 20 years from now. We need to get comfortable with difficult language, systemic racism, systemic sexism, and the intersection of those two. And understanding the impact that it has on all employees, particularly employees of color. We need to dig deeper. We need to monitor. The person that's doing the inclusion, belonging work needs to report directly to the CEO. We need to be sure that we're constantly tracking and monitoring. We need to be sure that we are developing our people, all of our people, including to the high profile programs. You can no longer say, given the demographics and how the demographics are changing, you can no longer say or use as an excuse, well, we haven't gotten to that group yet. That just doesn't work anymore. That is not the right answer. I am happy to say I have seen progress on that, and to really begin to build sisterhood and co-conspirators. You know, why do we think that white women understand race any more than white men? Race is a cultural phenomenon. We learn about the traditions, how we communicate, how we think about our belief systems in our families, in our communities. And white women grow up, for the most parts, in white monocultural communities, just like white men. They haven't had contact with Black girls. They haven't had interactions growing up. They're susceptible to the same stereotypes, the same myths, the same lack of empathy, lack of interaction as white males are, and sometimes even more extreme, because there's the issue of competition between women. People get angry when I say this, but you know, sometimes white women don't support each other very well. So when you start asking white women to connect across a racial line of a woman that they have had very little interaction with, a woman that they don't really know very much about. The other reality is that white women are more familiar to white men. They're their mothers, they're their wives, sisters, girlfriends, daughters, right? Think about the interactions that white women and white men have had with brown and black women, and what those kinds of relationships, how do they learn about race? It makes a big difference from being able to come together and to be able to support each other. The other thing that's really interesting in terms of value systems, we have different orientations. You know, Black women are taught early on, support others in your community, reach back, lift others up. It's not a caretaking, it's a support, it's a belief, it's an anchoring. It's in our DNA. White women don't necessarily have that. They come out of a highly individualistic culture, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So when you start talking about value orientations, there's not a whole lot there to weave two groups together. Enter the term co-conspirator. Allies is nice, but allies, you know, an ally can come and go. An ally can say, this is not something I'm really interested in. This is not going to help me, right? Co-conspirator, co-conspirator. Basically, you're going to support me no matter what. We're in this. We have equal skin in the game. We will face the awards, the win on this together, but we will also face the consequences. It's an important kind of relationship to build. That you are in it together. You're going to use your voices. You're going to strategize. It's action. Allies doesn't necessarily imply action all the time. Co-conspirators, action. And we need action on these issues. And I also believe that women will not advance, all women, until we bring our voices together. As long as we're divided, it's easy to conquer us. When we come united, that's a whole different matter to have to deal with. Co-conspirators come together. How do we create these relationships? Honest dialogue, sometimes very uncomfortable. Being able to realize it's not about you all the time. Being inquisitive, learning about each other. And being able to really connect and realize that, you know, what impacts one is going to impact the other. Oh my God. Oh my God. Let me give you some background. I was raised in the South Bronx. I'm adopted. My mother had a 6th grade education. My dad had an 8th grade education. And I had some really poor education, to be honest. My foundation was horrible. My foundation was never developed in the New York City school system where I started in the South Bronx, okay? They just did not develop us or teach us. I am amazed today at the schools that I've taught at. I've been at Tuck this is my 21st year at Tuck. I am truly blessed. I won't even say I'm lucky, I'm blessed. I've had an opportunity, particularly at Dartmouth, to grow and to expand and to make a difference the way I wanted to, with the support of my dean, of the support of the deanery. I have nothing to complain about. I might be the exception to the rule. I have seen advancement, but I've also seen doors closed in my face. I've also seen, well, you know, we're not ready to have a Black woman be a keynote. We're not sure you can work with white men and make a difference. We're not sure that you can really lead that charge. Or, you know, we're not sure that you're worthy of promotion and of tenure and all those other kind of trappings in higher education that we don't ever talk about, which are just as hard and brutal, if not more so, than in the corporate world. So am I better off? As I've aged, I've also learned what battles to pick. You know, some battles are not worth fighting. Let me conserve my energy. And I've also know that nobody does this alone. I've been very lucky, blessed again to have amazing sponsors, both academic and corporate. I've been very fortunate to have a network of women of all races, quite honestly, to really support me and lift me up. But I think I have matured to the point where I now know how to develop and build those relationships. I think that takes time. And, I didn't have the mentoring and that aspect on how to do that. It took me a little while to learn. That's why I'm so driven, if you will, to make sure that younger Black women and brown women and just women in general, there's a way to navigate this. But we're putting all the burden on the women, which is not right. We expect the women to do all the changes, make all the changes. No, it's time for corporations and society to recognize that's no longer going to work. Corporations have to start doing this much better. I like to say grit, influence, and grace. We always have one or two. We get one African American woman, one brown woman, one Asian woman, Indra Nui, there's one. And then there's no more, right? It's like, oh, there's only one. We have to get past our only one. I love our Vice President, VP Harris. Stacey Abrams, I bow to her feet any day. But that's one. They're not in the corporate sector, they're in the political sector. It's a different kind of way of surviving in the corporate. It gives me hope. It makes me proud for my granddaughter. Yes, there are role models. You can be anything you want to be, and not just tell a child that, a little Black girl that, but look at her. She did it, you can do it. But when it talks about when it comes to developing more women, we can't stop at one. One story, one shiro is not going to work. And what happens is we get the ones, and then okay, we don't need any more. There's so many fabulous women scholars of all races, particularly Black and brown, coming up behind me. We've got to recognize that there's more than one. And we've got to celebrate all, not just the ones. We get stuck on the ones. I want multiple celebrations.